ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says Parliament and the Democratic Alliance have no authority to request the viewing of the governing party's classified documents. He says the ANC is a private organization. This comes as the Constitutional Court is expected to rule on the DA's request to inspect the party's cadre deployment statistics. Let's get some detail now.
Guys, it is so funny to hear Fikile Mbalula saying that the ANC is a private organization and these papers are classified and what. But what he's failing to understand is that the cadre deployment policy has hurt South Africans. Right now, our country is literally on its knees because of cadre deployment. So not only the DA or not only the courts wants to see how the ANC does things there, the general public wants to see, people wants to know what is it exactly that the ANC is doing, man. Otherwise, man, they will have to agree with Thabo Mbeki. You remember Thabo Mbeki recently said that people right now are joining the ANC not because they want to serve the communities, not because they have the love to serve their communities, but they join the ANC because the ANC is like a gravy train. People are hoping that if I join the African National Congress, I'm going to be an MMC, I'm going to be a councillor, I'm going to be a premier, or possibly I'm going to be the president of the country. So these are the reasons why people are joining the African National Congress. Unlike them back in the days where they were literally fighting this apartheid oppressive regime. So the ANC has no right to tell us that these papers are classified. You have no right. You cannot deploy incompetent fools all across the country. And when we want to hold you accountable to that, you even refuse to show us the papers. Man, the ANC needs to release those cadre deployment papers so that we can know what is it exactly that is happening, man. You remember that even the DA, when they started with this, they said that if those cadre deployment records are released, we can prove that the ANC has been committing corruption through this cadre deployment of theirs. That's what they are saying. This is why the ANC, it is so hard for them to defend them classifying these papers, because guys, they've already lost 2 cases. Right now, I think they are going to the Constitutional Court, or they've already gone to the Constitutional Court, where the DA is like, guys, you need to release these papers so that we can see what you have done. You say that you haven't done any corruption with the cadre deployment policy. Release the papers then so that we can see. Fikile Mbalula cannot come here and start saying that ANC is a private organization as if the ANC, they are not in charge of South Africa. The ANC, they are in charge of South Africa. So South Africans have a right to know what's happening within the African National Congress.
And we're joined by the Democratic Alliance's Member of Parliament, Leon Schreiber. Alongside him is the Director for the School of Governance Studies at the Northwest University, Professor P Botha. To both of you, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Let's begin with you, Mr. Schreiber, and you tell us exactly what it is that you want to inspect from these documents. We're going to get into a deeper discussion about why the ANC feels that these are private and therefore you shouldn't be given any access to them.
Good morning, Colin, and good morning to the viewers. I'm going to explain using a very relevant metaphor, and that is, of course, if we look at the Springboks. Can you imagine a situation where we have the Springbok team being selected on the basis of their loyalty to a particular political party? Imagine how the nation would respond if any political party, including the ANC, instructs the coach of the Springboks that you must choose these players because we consider them to be loyal cadres. We would never accept that, and yet we are expected to accept the idea that the ANC can decide for us who should be managing our access to water, our access to electricity, the basic services that we rely on. And this case is fundamentally about that we can no longer accept a situation where the ANC uses cadre deployment to illegally, in our view, interfere with appointment processes. And where they have done so, we as the public would insist that we can see who these people are that were deployed, not on the basis of their ability to do the job, but on...
Hey guys, but just look at that table, man. It's Paul Mashatile, Ramaphosa, Mantashe, Mbalula, and Mkwenyane. Man, there's no hope for South Africa. There's no hope.
on the basis of their loyalty to the ANC. And that really is what this case is about.
Yeah. Professor Pacho, do members of the public have a right to know who decides which person goes to a government institution? And I should think that this is already normal. This should be readily accepted. Or are we making a mistake here?
Thank you, colleague, and to your viewers at home, and good morning to Leon as well. I think this is a very topical issue, but also very relevant for us as South Africans, especially also, as you would know, the problems of state capture and the issues of governance that we are referring to. But from a scholarly point of view, the issue of public policy, as we know, it's actually something that comes from the political party systems and processes. So in principle, to have a deployment, it's not and should not be an issue for us. The issue here is who is being deployed and what kind of skills do they offer and at what level. So I think we have not clarified those kind of issues as a society, and maybe this is why we are in trouble. And so perhaps it's something that we need to know on what basis did the ANC choose the kind of cadres, who are those cadres, and who actually chose.
I mean, guys, is it really important to know on what basis when these guys are clearly incompetent? These guys are incompetent. And this conversation, I have to disagree with the professor, man. It has already been heard. People have already spoke about this. Cadre deployment records it's a huge issue today because people have been speaking about it.
Them. So maybe clarifying some of these issues and from the Constitutional Court outcome could help us to map a way forward better as a country in terms of how do we mix the party and the state in a way that benefits the country better.
Yeah. Mr. Schreiber, let's come back to you. You've gone as far as trying to use the Promotion of Access to Information Act in order to retrieve these records. Perhaps give us the emphasis as to why this information is in the public interest.
Yes, so you'll recall that this matter has been dealt with by the High Court in Johannesburg and by the Supreme Court of Appeal already. And if you go back and you look at those judgments, you'll see that what this really boils down to is when a private organization like the ANC or any other political party interferes in appointment processes to the public sector, and when the public is affected by the lack of service delivery, corruption, etc., then the public gains the right to act in what was the role of that private organization in the appointment decisions. And that's really the foundation of what this matter is about. If you look at Section 32 of the Constitution, it says very clearly that everyone has the right to access information from a public entity and from private entities where that impacts on the public and it impacts on the rights of the public. So just to latch on to what the Prof mentioned there, this element of improving our public service, improving service delivery, is another part of why the courts have so far decided to grant the DA's application. Because we've made it very clear that we believe cadre deployment to be at the root, the foundation of state capture, of corruption, and of failing service delivery, and that we want to fix it, that we want to abolish cadre deployment and replace it with a new system of merit-based appointments where everyone has a fair access to these public sector jobs. But in order for us to do so, we must have full sight of how cadre deployment works. And that's been another very decisive element that the courts have said is correct. That if we want to change the law, if we want to change the way in which the system operates, we cannot do so when critical information is being held secret. And that is a second element of why the application through the Promotion of Access to Information Act is one that must succeed and we believe will succeed also at the Constitutional Court.
I mean, guys, this is no-brainer, man. Like I said, these guys are saving us. They are saving us. These people should be there already. There is no need for the ANC to go to the Constitutional Court to try to hide these cadre deployment records, because the first thing that comes to my mind is, what is it exactly that the ANC is trying to hide? If you guys are so innocent, or if you guys believe so much in your cadre deployment policy, why do you feel the need to go to the Constitutional Court to try to hide these records? It makes no sense. It makes no sense to the public, man. These records should be there to the public. And like Leon said, man, people deserve to know what happens. And guys, you really have to understand that right now, average South Africans, man, it's hard for them to work for the government in any capacity. Mainly because of these cadre deployment records. No, mainly because of this policy of cadre deployment. The ANC, they are prioritizing their own members of the party instead of the people. And it's also a problem because people go to the universities, people go out to study, but they can't find jobs. And you have these people who are incompetent to do some of these jobs. They are hired to our government institutions. Why? Because they are the members of the ANC. So it is no brainer, man. It makes no sense why these people would go to the Constitutional Court to try to hide these records. These records should be out there in public. This is the reason why they've already lost 2 court cases. Because there are reasons. It does make sense. They cannot offer valid reasons why they want to hide the cadre deployment records. They can't. Now they are going to the Constitutional Court, man. They've already lost 2 cases. Lost. But still, they want to go to the Constitutional Court because you don't want the people that you are serving to see your records. How insane is that?
Professor Paho, talk to us about the state of governance in public institutions at the moment. Where are we? Are we sitting with a crisis, or perhaps we are being alarmist? The ANC would probably say, by the way, they were invited to this discussion and they chose not to come. So where are we as a nation in terms of the state of governance, and if what we are experiencing is as a direct consequence of people who the Democratic Alliance says are incompetent and some of them are corrupt, why in the world should we not have a right to know why they are deployed? What are the reasons they deployed to these public institutions?
Thank you, Oli. I think it's an important point you are raising. Our state of governance, I think it's, if you want to put it from a health perspective, I think one would say it's in the ICU. The outcomes of the Zondo Commission, I think they were very clear to many of us on really what has been happening. And subsequent to that, we have noticed clearly the state of for example, the security cluster. You saw that our police, our state security agency are really struggling to do the bare minimum. You would agree with me if you look at the state of Home Affairs. They even looked at the launching of the Border Management Agency, which many believe that is just not really in the manner that we had conceptualized it, that is going to bring in a fresh start in the whole arrangement of the border management. If you look also into the economic cluster, we have been downgraded recently, and are really the National Treasury has indicated that we are at a fiscal cliff, so we are in trouble in many fronts. And if you look at the state of provinces and even the state of municipalities in the country, it is really a very concerning situation. So it is indeed an important conversation that but I need to accept the fact that it's a very complex conversation that we are having now, because political parties and politicians are not going to just let it go like that. But as citizens, I think it is indeed our responsibility to stand up and say we are going through a lot and we need answers from people that are taking decisions on our behalf.
The people who are taking the decisions on your behalf are saying you have no right to see this record. You have no right to see how the ANC employs people. You have no right. And if the DA says that with this cadre deployment records, we're going to prove that corruption was done by the ANC through this cadre deployment policy, and the ANC right now is going to the highest constitution on the land to try to seal the records of the cadre deployment. I mean, like, guys, it's clear as day. The DA are on the money. The DA are on the money. The fact that the ANC right now is going to the highest courts to try to seal these records from the DA, man, it means that the DA are on the money.
Let me come back to you, Leon Schreiber, and ask you whether you have...
And I also feel like maybe this interview, maybe they should have invited maybe the ANC spokesperson, man. I feel like they should have invited an ANC spokesperson to hear from the African National Congress clearly, because these guys, honestly, Leon is from the DA and Professor, man, you know how professors are. I feel like they should have invited an ANC spokesperson to ask us these questions. It would have been more interesting.
Possibly thought of a situation where these ANC deployment records may or may not exist. Why am I saying this? There was an intimation of this sort when President Ramaphosa was asked specifically about these at the Zondo Commission. What if they don't exist, by the way? What are you going to do?
Well, what President Ramaphosa said to the Zondo Commission is that he could only find meeting minutes covering a period between March 2018 and May 2021. So that was a set of minutes that he provided to the Zondo Commission and which the DA subsequently obtained also through a PIA request. President Ramaphosa said he could not find minutes from the earlier period, which is, of course, when he himself was the chairman of the ANC's Cadre Deployment Committee. Now, I would be quite alarmed if I was a member of a committee and the chair has lost the minutes. He can't even keep record of the minutes. But be that as it may, Chloe, I think it's very important to emphasize that what we are asking for here and what the courts have granted us already through the High Court and the Supreme Court of Appeal goes much, much further than just meeting minutes. The courts have agreed with us that we have a right to access not only the minutes, but also any email threads, any WhatsApp conversations, any CVs, any other relevant documents, and any correspondence instructing public officials on who they must appoint. So this goes much further than just meeting minutes. And the other critical problem for the ANC is that throughout this entire legal process, we are now in our third court as the ANC desperately tries to appeal this matter. At no point have they indicated that these records don't exist. In fact, everything that they've put before the court under oath has indicated that these records do exist. They just want to keep them secret. So, of course, we have prepared for such an eventuality, and we will take further action if the ANC finds itself in contempt of court, because that's what it would amount to. But at the end of the day, they have essentially indicated through court that these documents do exist, and that what we are asking goes much broader than just meeting minutes. So we are confident that unless the ANC is willing to go to jail to be in contempt of court, they will have to hand over these records once this process is concluded.
Dr. Shriber, just a moment before I go back to Professor Pajo. You are also, though, going into an election period. And it goes without saying that many will be skeptical about whether or not you want these documents for service delivery intended purpose. That means to improve the state of governance in our country. Or are you merely wanting to score political points here as we head to this election period?
It's both. It's both. I want to hold you accountable, and at the same time, I want to parade around the people, showing them what you are doing. It's both. You cannot force the DA to choose, man. Whether the DA are doing this whether the DA are doing this mainly for political points, but there's nothing that you can do because right now the courts are agreeing with them. So it's both. The DA wants to expose the ANC, and at the same time, they are trying to score political points against the ANC. It's both. Easy, it's both.
Well, there's 2 points to make there. The first one is that this Promotion of Access to Information Act request, I submitted that in 2020 already. So in other words, we have only reached this point where the election is now nearing because the ANC has refused to cooperate for nearly 3 years now. So they are, in fact, the ones that have caused these delays. We know that they use this tactic of Stalingrad tactics to delay the outcomes of legal processes. And in this case, if these records are impacting them politically, they only have themselves to blame.
Yes.
Because they are the ones who dragged it out. If they complied with a legal PIA request that I submitted in 2020, then we would have been long past this particular issue. So that's really the first point to make. The second point...
I mean, like, the ANC have themselves to blame. The DA right now is scoring political points left, right, and center. The ANC have themselves to blame. Because they refused to release the records, man. The day these guys refused to release the records is the day, like, everybody said, no, ANC, you are guilty right now. The fact that you are refusing to release the records, it means that you are guilty. 2 times the courts have told you to release the records, you say no. So of course, right now, the DA is having fun. It's having fun. It's a political point scoring. They are having fun.
Is that, as you know, the DA's work on this issue extends beyond merely this particular case and this element of bringing transparency. We had also gone to court again, 2 years ago already, to have cadre deployment actually declared unconstitutional and illegal. And we're currently awaiting judgment in this particular case, again, one that originated well in advance of the election.
Yeah.
And then finally, there is the cadre deployment bill that the DA had recently tabled in Parliament, again, a process that had started really at the beginning of this particular parliamentary term. So I think the record clearly indicates that we have been working on this issue for a long period and over a sustained period to combat the ill effects of cadre deployment, and that we are doing that because we believe bringing an end to this practice is the only way we are going to be able to fix load shedding, fix the water crisis we are facing, and fix the service delivery issues that South Africans suffer under every single day.
Professor Pacho, you get to have the last word. The DA says, well, this was done way before the elections that are upon us now, and so if these documents don't work in favor of the ANC, well, who has been mismanaging state entities? So if the shoe fits, wear it. Where do you stand?
I think that is a very valid point, Oli. The ANC is a party in government, so they are responsible for a very complex system of making sure that we get the basic services, that our infrastructure gets improved, that we lead the lives that respect the taxpayers in the country largely. So I think they need to up the ante and make sure that where they are responsible, they actually take the best amongst themselves to lead. And unfortunately, I don't think this is what we have seen. I think we have really seen the West in the ANC ranks being the one taking the lead, and I think by and large this is partly why our governance systems are in tatters in many ways. So they need to, if I were the ANC, should have actually engaged DA better on this issue to try and work out the aid deployment policy for South Africa. That just does not represent the ANC, but that really would be something the country can look back at and say, we have agreed on how the state should, the party should work with the state. Because so far, I think what we are really saying is that there's some very serious blurring of lines between what the ANC does as a party and what the ANC does as a government.
So guys, what are your thoughts, man? What are your thoughts? I feel like, man, the ANC, they have themselves to blame for all of this. They have themselves to blame. No one can come out and say that the DA is trying to score political points when this issue was raised back in 2020. If this issue was dealt with maybe back then in 2020, by now the issue would have died down a bit. But right now we are on, guys. It's election season. It's election season. Everyone is going to do whatever they have to do to get the votes, and you cannot blame the DA for doing whatever they have to do to get the votes. The ANC have themselves to blame right now, and they are caught. They are caught. I don't know how the ANC is going to survive this, because it's going to be hurtful to them. Going to 2024 elections, man, the DA is the worst enemy to have. These guys, you don't want the DA as your enemy. These guys are the worst enemies to have, because they will drag your ass to court. They will drag your ass to court, knowing exactly that you are guilty. They will make sure that you are exposed. And right now, the ANC has no choice. They have already lost 2 court cases on this cadre deployment thing. They are going to the highest court. They're going to the highest court in the land to try to seal these records of theirs. So they have themselves to blame. So people must not say that the DA is trying to score political points. The ANC have themselves to blame, because they should have dealt with this whole thing a while back, not now. So guys, please tell me, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this whole matter of cadre deployment? What are your thoughts? Please tell me what you think on the comment section. Don't forget to hit that like button, and the most important part, subscribe. My name is Thomas Mabaso, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.